Yes, yes, I'm reading.
Okay.
But such is not the
Yeah.
compassion which actuates Arjuna in the rejection of his work and mission. That is not compassion, but an impotence full of a weak self-pity, a recoil from the mental suffering which his act must entail on himself. I see not what shall thrust from me the sorrow that drives up the senses. And of all things, self-pity is among the most ignoble and un-Aryan of moods. Its pity for others is also a form of self-indulgence. It is the physical shrinking of the nerves from the act of slaughter, the egoistic emotional shrinking of the heart from the destruction of the Dhritarashtrians because they are one's own people, and without them life will be empty. This pity is a weakness of the mind and senses, a weakness which may well be beneficial to men of a lower grade of development who have to be weak because otherwise they will be hard and cruel, for they have to cure the harsher by the gentler forms of sensational egoism. They have to call in tamas, the debile principle, to help sattva, the principle of light, in quelling the strength and excess of their rajasic passions. But this way is not for the developed Aryan man, who has to grow not by weakness, but by an ascension from strength to strength. Arjuna is the divine man, the master man in the making, and as such he has been chosen by the gods. He has a work given to him. He has God beside him in his chariot. He has the heavenly bow, Ganges, in his hand. He has the champions of unrighteousness, the opponents of the divine leading of the world in his front. Not his is the right to determine what he shall do or not do according to his emotions and his passions, or to shrink from a necessary destruction by the claim of his egoistic heart and reason, or to decline his work because it will bring sorrow and emptiness to his life, or because its earthly result has no value to him in the absence of the thousands who must perish. All that is a weak falling from his higher nature. He has to see only the work that must be done, kartavyam karna, to hear only the divine command reached through his warrior nature, to feel only for the world and the destiny of mankind, calling to him as a God sent man to assist its march and clear its path of the dark armies that beset it.
Oh, what a magnificent para full of subtle suggestions. We'll have to look into all the subtle suggestions. We'll do that. So, the first thing we have to realize is that we have to compare the reaction of the ordinary ignorant man, okay, in his pity and compassion. The discussion is between pity and compassion. So, in the lower consciousness, when we are there, our pity is describing is a weakness. Okay? Is a weakness. But when you are in the higher consciousness, that self-pity, that pity becomes a compassion. And that compassion is without weakness. And in the ordinary condition of the world in which we are all, our pity is a very interesting discussion. Is saying it's a weakness. So we have to understand this. Okay. Let's see what he says. So there is a compassion which is full of strength. And that strength, compassion, can even appear to be cruel. Okay? The divine can send you some corrective action which will put you on the right track, but that corrective action can be painful to you. So even at the higher level when you are there, the divine compassion can even be violent. But when we are in the lower one, all violence we shun. And therefore, our pity, which is a very interesting discussion he has said, but we have to see the pity is the weakness of the nerves. You yourself feel weak. You can't handle the violence, which is a divine principle. You are not seeing it in the right way. Okay, that's what he is discussing. So remember this difference between pity and compassion. Pity in the lower is weakness. Pity becomes compassion, which is a strong strength at the higher level. So let's see what he's saying in detail. But such is not the compassion which actuates Arjuna in the rejection of his work and mission. So he's saying that he has to kill all the army which is there in front of him, and he says, impossible for me to kill people. Now, later on in the paragraph, Srebda discusses and says, how does that solve the problem in the world? He is only thinking of himself. And he's saying, I won't kill. Does it solve the problem? There are 100,000 people who are dying all over the world. Does that solve the problem? Really? It doesn't solve the problem. He's only thinking of his own, the war that he has to wage and kill a few people. But what about all the others who are getting killed? So that he is not thinking of. In other words, destruction is something fundamental, which he is not realizing. He is thinking that destruction is something bad and he must not participate in the destruction. But he has to understand that destruction is also a divine principle. You can destroy something to create a new one. So destruction should not be seen necessarily as something negative. It has to be seen as something, a divine force, used in the right way, sometimes for destruction, sometimes for construction. So this is what we have to understand. Okay? So he is really saying that is not a compassion, but an impotence, full of a weak self-pity. This is very interesting. If you look into yourself also, you will see that sometimes when we see poor people on the road, we are affected by it. But this is not compassion because you can't solve the problem fully. You are actually indulging your own weakness. You are justifying your own weakness. You are unable to watch the misery and the poverty of others. Okay? So this is what Shendra is saying. What about Buddha's experience of poverty and sickness and death? That is something which is he's seeing the reality and he says, I want to solve the problem for everybody. This is a fundamental. He's not going to save only one beggar, okay, or one person who is ill. He won't save. He wants to do it on a general scale. That is the real compassion. Okay? So this is the difference. Arjuna is recoiling and saying, I can't do. And Buddha decides that no, I will solve it for everybody and give a solution for everybody. That is the real compassion. Okay? So such is not the compassion which actuates Arjuna in the rejection of his work and mission. That is not compassion, but an impotence, full of weak self-pity. The pity for others, you are justifying it is your own subjective reaction to something which you are not able to bear. Okay? The more you think about it, you will see like that. Okay. For instance, okay, take the case of euthanasia. You have a relative and he is suffering. When he is suffering, you also suffer because of your attachment. And you don't want to see that suffering. And that's why sometimes when the doctor says that he can't recover and we have to remove the life support systems, sometimes they agree because it is solving their own problem. Okay, it is not solving the problem of the person. So this is something very interesting. We have to see very carefully. You think about it. All pity at our level is a weakness. It's not a strength. If you look at it very objectively, then you will see that it is your own subjective reaction which is weakness.
But
that is not.
Tell me. Then there is no question of helping others then?
Exactly. You can't help others. You can't even help yourself. So how will you help others? Even when you help others, it is not solving the problem. That's the whole thing. Okay, Srebda is discussing the problem of suffering. Okay. You can feed a man for one day and a hungry man, he will feel fine. But are you solving the problem? No, next day he'll be hungry again. Even if you feed 100 people, tell me.
But if we give him a job?
That's exactly what you have to do at the spiritual level, but not giving a job. Because how many people you will give a job? See, there's a very interesting thing which they say. If you give a fish, feed a man with a fish for one day, you are solving the problem only for that day. But if you teach him fishing, you will have solved his problem for the individual man. But you are not solving the problem for everybody. That would be the real.
At least one person benefits, no?
That's okay, but you're not solving the problem of suffering on a global scale. Okay, so that's why it's a weakness. You have to think of something much larger. Srebda is not saying that don't do it. He's saying that that's not a real solution to the problem of suffering. Okay. because you have to go to another level to be able to do that. That's exactly what Surendra has done. I told you, in synthesis also we have that. There are so many who do not enter the nirvana consciousness because of their own liberation. I told you about Buddha also, na? He is the Amitabha Buddha. Okay? He is the one who says, I will not take individual liberation until I have solved the problem for everybody. And that's exactly what Surendra also has done. He has said in his letters very clearly, I damn care for my own supramentalization. I am doing it for humanity. Finally, afterwards, he says, I am doing it for the divine, not even for humanity. So you are solving the problem on a very large scale. Okay? So that is exactly what is being discussed. So if you do it on a small scale, it is with your small, weak, vital that you are doing. It may be okay at your level. Okay, it's not bad. You can't reject it. You can't say that don't do it. You don't. You do. Charity works and all that is fine. You have to do charity, humanitarian work, depending on which level you are. Now, here in this case, Arjuna is ready for a spiritual life, and that's why Shri Krishna is taking him. You are ready for a spiritual life, but you're not applying it. So please go there and do the action. Okay, that's exactly the point. We will see later on that Sridhar is saying, okay, Arjuna is a divine man, master man in the making. Don't make that mistake of in the making. So this is the thing.
Rangada, what Pallu said, that we can help, no? So individual level, at least we can help a little
That's why
bit.
I'm saying, that's why I'm saying that you need not stop that action. Of course you can help, but that doesn't solve the problem on a global scale. You are helping others with your weakness. Now Arjuna, he is being taught to help everybody with strength and not with weakness. That's the difference between giving fish to one man for one day and teaching him fishing. As you said, job. Okay, that solves the problem on a much larger scale. But there is a largest scale also. So there is a gradation, isn't it? Srimba is not saying don't do it.
But
Nobody
we
is saying
don't have the capacity to help the whole humanity, no? So somewhere we have to start. So that is where we can start, no?
that's exactly what I'm saying. Because but Arjuna is ready for a higher level. That's the whole point.
Okay.
If when you are ready for a higher level, the divine will guide you and tell you that go to another level. There are degrees. Humanitarian, charity, even when weak, is good. There's nothing wrong in it. At that level. Remember that. At every level, yeah, that's right. Okay, I think it's clear now.
Yes.
Yeah. At every level, there is a good, but there can always be a better and there can be a best. And we are slowly going in the evolution towards. And because Arjuna is ready for a higher life, Shri Krishna is telling him there. In fact, Gita later on they tell you very clearly, Arjuna, Shri Krishna says that don't give knowledge, a higher knowledge to a man who is not ready. Okay? Don't give knowledge. Yeah, tell me.
Just here we can once recall that third chapter, in which he is saying that what sort of a disciple is ready for the knowledge in Gita.
I didn't follow exactly what you said, Rachanadi. Tell me again.
Can you hear me? So what I'm saying is, right now, you can just recall that in which Sherwin has described what a disciple is. What sort of a disciple is ready for the knowledge of Gita? For the sermon of Gita, na?
Exactly.
In the
That's
third
right.
chapter.
Yeah. So when a disciple is
So
not
probably
ready,
at the
yeah.
So that is what
Yeah.
it just came to me, so I thought of sharing it. Okay.
That's right. That's right. You have to give knowledge to a person for which he is ready. So the person who is not ready, by all means, let him help with his weakness, whatever he can. Okay. But if you are ready, you can guide the person to a better solution. That's the whole point. And there can be a best solution. Can there ever be the best solution? No, because the evolution is there and you're going from one level to another level. Surendra has given us the best solution for the moment because you have to go to the next level of evolution at the supramental level. But will it end there? No. poverty and misery will always remain in the physical world. The divine is slowly revealing his things in the, even when the supramental the race comes in, it doesn't mean to say that poverty and misery will disappear and suffering will disappear in the world. It will remain for some people who are not ready. Remember that gradation of evolution, that's very important. Then it becomes clear. Okay. So, very clearly, there is no discouragement for those who are at a lower level. Certainly, even with your weakness, you can help people. That is better than to be insensitive and not take care of others. No? Certainly. But if you are ready, do it on a better scale. That's the whole point. The first scale is giving a fish to somebody and giving him a meal for one day. The second level is give him a job or teach him how to support himself. But that will solve only one individual problem. A better problem will be to solve the problem for 100 others, 200 others, entire mankind. Okay? There's a whole gradation. So that is exactly what the Gita is all about. It says very clearly later on that giving a superior knowledge to somebody who is not ready is absolutely a disaster it can be. That's exactly what is being discussed. Okay? As I told you, it's very subtle. The more you think about it, the more things will fall into place. So Arjuna is at a lower level and he is rejecting. Sri Krishna is telling him, you are ready for a higher solution. So go to the higher solution and see there what happens. And in Arjuna's case, he is being asked to fight. But many others, he would not have been asked to fight. He would have been asked to do something else. That depends on the divine will. Just see very carefully Sri Ramnu's war for independence. What happened to him? Arjuna is being encouraged to continue his old action, but with a different attitude. In Sri Ramnu's case, what happened? He was told to leave that action, and he obeyed. He says, you are ready for another action, you go to the other action. Don't continue your old action of trying to liberate India. That will be taken care of by others who are at a lower level. See, it changes. No? It's not that the divine is always going to tell you to fight. It depends on the divine will and the divine intention. It can be anything. If Arjuna was already a spiritual man, maybe he would have told him not to fight, exactly as in Sri Ramnu's case. He was told to stop this revolutionary work and go to Pondicherry and do something much more higher for which you are ready. Yeah? So, the whole thing is gradation. When we think of the gradation, everything becomes clear. I told you it's very subtle. The more you think about it, the more you will realize. Okay. Okay. Go back to our text. What's the time? We got 10 minutes. We'll read more. Yes, sir. There, so Sri Krishna is telling Arjuna, you are ready for a higher life, and what you are indulging in thinking that is very fine is actually a lower state. Your state of self-pity is not compassion. Rise to a level where there is a right attitude to things. That's what he's saying. So he's saying, Srimati is describing what Arjuna is saying. I see not what shall thrust from me the sorrow that dries up the senses. Okay? So he's saying that there's no solution to my sorrow. Naturally, he is at a lower level if he says that. And of all things, self-pity is among the most ignoble and un-Aryan of moods. Now note the word self-pity. Okay? It is not pity for others. When you are having pity for others at a lower level, you are indulging your own weakness. You are not able to stand the suffering of others. Okay? It's very subtle. Just think about it. You are yourself justifying your own weakness. So self-pity is among the most ignoble and un-Aryan of all. Its pity for others is also a form of self-indulgence. Get the significance of the sentence fully. It's a self-indulgence. What I am capable of doing is okay, fine with me. So I can't stand his suffering. I give you the idea of that euthanasia also, no? Very often, okay, that's another example that we can give. We can, when you see your relative suffering, whatever it be, okay, and you want to help him and you suffer, if you suffer also with him, and then you tell the doctor that please remove the life support systems, you are indulging your own, you are solving your problem. But you can do that also from strength. If you tell the doctors, you may remove the life support system because that will relieve him. Then you are doing it from some amount of strength. It can be done from strength, it can be done from weakness. So this is the discussion that is going on, taking place in this place. Okay? But that strength comes only with a higher level, not at a lower level. 90% of humanity, it is their own pity which they want to, their own suffering which they want to relieve. Okay, that's it. The sentence is so clear. Just think about it. It's pity for others is also a self-indulgence. Some amount of pity is there for others, you do feel bad. But it is your own weakness that is reacting. Okay, if you are really strong, you say, oh, he's suffering, so let me see what I can do. Now you can do something with strength. You can take him and do whatever you can. Then Sri Krishna and Sri Ram are not saying that don't do it. Charity and humanitarian, many times he says that it is not a spiritual action. It's a moral action. It's at a lower level. Okay? So, and you have to rise. When you are ready, you rise to a higher level. And of all things, self-pity is among the most ignoble and un-Aryan of things. Its pity for others is also a form of self-indulgence. Just think about it very carefully and see also, you have to be very self-analytical to see that sometimes suffering you can't bear. This is what you have to see carefully. It is the physical shrinking of the nerves and the act of slaughter, the egoistic emotional shrinking of the heart from the destruction of the Dhritarashtrians, because they are our own people. So I'm going to put that in inverted commas, because our own people means the problem is yours. That is again subjective. It's very interesting. It's not objective.
Rangada,
Yeah.
it is our own people or one's own people?
Okay, no, it's one's own people. It's one's own people, yeah. Okay, you are right. But the meaning is the same.
Yes, yes.
Our own means you are including all the Pandavas. But when you think one's own people, you are thinking of my own people. Okay. And without them, life will be empty. So you are trying to solve your own problem. You are not trying to solve the problem of others. Okay. Life will be empty. That means I will suffer. So your pity for others is a form of self-indulgence. It's so clear. Okay. Then this pity is a weakness of the mind and senses. A weakness which may well be beneficial to men of a lower grade of development. There you are. That's exactly what we have been discussing. So, and Shri Krishna is not saying that pity is bad. If you are at a lower level, pity is good, because at a lower level, you can be very harsh and insensitive to the suffering of others. So which one is better? Even with your pity, when you feel bad for others, although it's your own reaction, it is better than to be hard. That's exactly what Sundar is saying. Okay. Insensitivity is certainly inferior to pity, and compassion is superior to pity. There's a gradation. So this pity is a weakness of the mind and senses, a weakness which may well be beneficial to men of a lower grade of development. Right? Now you can see, we have to give full value to all the words that he is using. So then one who is insensitive, he should be made to feel pity, although it's a weakness. And one who has got pity should be made to go to compassion, which is a higher level. And that's exactly what Shri Krishna is doing to Arjuna, because he is ready. Okay? So they have, because they otherwise they would be hard and cruel. For they have to cure the harshness by the gentler forms of sensational egoism. They have to call in tamas, the debile principle, to help sattva, principle of light, in quelling the strength and excess of their rajasic passions. This is what the hard and cruel have to do. They have to cure the harshness by the gentler forms of emotional, sensational egoism. In other words, if you are at a tamasic level, you have to bring in the sattvic principles of gentleness, sweetness, pity. These things have to come in. That's what he said. The debile principle to help such in quelling the strength and excess of their rajasic passion. But this way is not for the developed Aryan man. Look at that. Okay? This way is for the not the developed man. The man who is at lowest level, he has to be taught not to be insensitive to people, but to have pity for others. Although it's a middle step. Then those who have pity for others, they have to go to the next level. Okay? So clear, na? So this is not the way for the developed Aryan man. The undeveloped Aryan man is very justified in having pity. But the developed Aryan man who has to grow not by weakness, but by an ascension from strength to strength. Now, look at the next sentence, very clear. Arjuna is the divine man, the master man in the making. He has not yet become the master man, not the divine man, but he is ready for it in the making. And as such, he has been chosen by the gods. He has been chosen to go to another level. Okay? From the lower level, he has to rise to the higher level. But Arjuna is chosen by the gods. He has a work given to him. He has God beside him in his chariot. He has a heavenly bow Gandiva in his hand. He has the champions of unrighteousness, the opponents of the divine, leading of the world in his front. So he has to do that work. Every situation calls for a different divine order, a divine command. As I told you so clearly, in Arjuna's case, the divine is commanding him to continue his work. And in the case of Sriranda, it was exactly the opposite. You leave this work and go to another work for which you are fit. So it is not that the divine command is always going to be to everybody, you can kill your enemy. Certainly not. It's a situation that calls for it. Okay? He has a work given, and that work changes from man to man. No? In Arjuna's case, he has to do this. He has to kill the forces of unrighteousness. Okay. So he has a work given to him. He has God beside him. All the things are ready for him. All the circumstances of life. He has God beside him in his chariot. He has a heavenly bow, Gandiva in his hand. He has the champions of unrighteousness, the opponents of the divine leading of the world in his front. So all the circumstances call for the right reaction, which is destruction of the unrighteous. He has a word given to him. Not his is the right to determine what he shall do or not do according to his emotions and passions, or to shrink from a necessary destruction by the claim of his egoistic heart and reason. So again, you can see very clearly here in this sentence that gradation that is there. The gradation is for one who is insensitive, rise to the next level, become gentler and more considerate of others. Those who are considerate of others and still at a level of the level where you are feeling pity for others and trying to help, you must rise to another level from strength to strength. And that work is given to you, it depends on what the divine work is. You have no right to decide. A spiritual man has no right to decide his own action. He has to depend upon the divine action. Whatever the divine tells him to do, he has to do. Okay? So just imagine Sriranda's case, he's being told by Sri Krishna, go to Pondicherry. Go to Chandranagar first and go to Pondicherry. Now, what would a normal man do? Arey, I'm fighting for India and such a great noble act, and I'm being told to go away. No, I won't. That would be the reaction of a normal man. But here is Sriramda who is ready and he obeys the divine will. That's when you are ready for that, you have no right to decide your own. Let the divine decide for you what you should do and not do. So,
Excuse me.
tell me.
Hello.
Yes,
I
tell me.
feel even Sri Aurobindo first denied the divine and he insisted on his political work, and that is why the divine had to throw him in the prison to like bring him back to his senses. That's what I feel. Because he did not listen to the divine. Okay, give up politics. He insisted on politics and then he was thrown to Alipur.
Yeah.
Is my thinking wrong?
How do you know?
Okay. Yasmin, I didn't hear exactly what you said because the phone is not very. Can you repeat what you said again once more? We have come to the end of our time, but just tell me what we can end the class here
You
after.
know,
Huh.
Sri Aurobindo also initially did not listen to the divine when he was told to give up politics. He thought
Okay.
he was absolutely necessary for the freedom of India.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
he insisted on politics, and then to teach him a lesson, the divine had to throw him in the Alipur jail. Okay, now
Yes.
let me teach you something, and now you get out of politics.
Yes, that's right. It's the circumstances. The divine teaches you in slow degrees. Okay. First, get away from politics. I'll put you in prison to teach you a lesson. You are right. There's nothing wrong in that. Okay? Because the divine also teaches by gradations. If he was in the thick of the revolutionary work, where would he have time to listen to Sri Krishna's the instructions of the Gita? When he went to the jail, there was no outside work to disturb him. Full concentration, he is ready, and Sri Krishna comes and gives him the secret of the Gita as well as the secret of the Veda. He says that. Okay, so that's right. You are quite right. Okay, we've got a little bit left. We'll leave that for next time. So, Sunki, please note down the page and the middle of the para. Okay?
Yes, I will.
Yeah, tell
Yes.
me.
Yes, I will make
Rangada,
a note, Rangada.
Okay, yeah.
Rangada, then what about the common people like me? How do I come to know that what is divine call?
You, you won't know because you are at a level where you cannot listen to the divine telling you. You have to be at a level where the divine is telling you, and that means purity of consciousness. That's difficult. We are all at a level where we don't know the divine will, but we are evolving. It will be one day, it will come where you will be in the position of Arjuna. At our level, we don't know what the divine will is. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Okay.